Okay. I think we got Joe back again. Joe, you there?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, all right. We're going to keep this going, stitching this together. All right. Matchups between MSU, Ohio State, and MSU, Minnesota. I mean, I guess Ohio State is what you wouldn't want if you're the Spartans because every single game with between Izzo and Mata goes down to the very end. I think the last 20 something meetings between these teams, they scored, I think, the exact same amount of points, and I think they split the last 22, something like that. So I think it's 11-11 with equal amount of points. So if it's the Buckeyes, you can expect another one down to the end. On the other side, Minnesota, it's a team that I said before we played it, before they played, that the length was going to be an issue for MSU, and it was. And they're obviously the same tall team they were when they came to Breslin. So I think either matchup is not going to be all that favorable to the Spartans. So, I mean, between the two, I guess you'd go with Minnesota because I think most would agree they're an inferior team. Plus, you've got the Buckeyes who are probably maybe still playing for a tournament spot a little bit, so they might be a little bit more motivated. But between the two, it's going to be interesting. Other than Wisconsin, this anybody in this tournament could do anything. Penn State and Nebraska went down to the wire with Penn State winning. Rutgers hung with Minnesota for a bit, for quite a bit, until the Gophers pulled away. Indiana's playing. Indiana, Purdue, Illinois, all playing for potential tournament berths. Wisconsin is playing for a 1 seed. I think this conference was there was so much parity in it. Maryland has done well, but a lot of people pointing to them being the number one luck team in KenPom. So I think anything can really happen, and it should be a good time in Chicago for anybody going. I think our own Pete Rossman is down there. He lives in the area, but yeah, to kind of get back to what I was talking about, I guess between the two, I guess I would pick with Minnesota. I think no matter who they face, I'm going to pick the Spartans to win. Is that how you're viewing it? You think how would you pick against each of those matchups?
So I would definitely pick MSU to win against Minnesota. And in my little Big Ten tournament preview, I guessed that we'd play Ohio State and that we'd end up losing to Ohio State in that rematch, just for all those reasons that I laid out earlier, right? I mean, where Ohio State shot really poorly from the line, they shot poorly from three. MSU shot well from three. I just don't think that all of those factors would occur again. Although it is possible that MSU would be a little bit better on the boards than they were where they got out-rebounded by Ohio State in that first game. So, I mean, what's really interesting is that I think that Ohio State matchup is a particularly poor one. But if MSU was to get past them on Friday night, I think things open up a little bit with the potential to play Maryland or who would Maryland play there? That's the sixth seed.
I had the bracket up. Where did I go? I think I.
Or Purdue, right? So Purdue's the sixth seed. So to play Maryland or Purdue there in that semifinal game, I think would be pretty good as well. So I think there's the potential to make a little bit of a run, and I think that MSU would benefit from winning a couple games. But my guess here is just that with working Dawson back into the lineup, it's going to end up being a loss to Ohio State, and that's going to be okay, right? I mean, probably end up with a 7 or 8 seed there. But.
Right. I think last check, the Spartans were a 7 in all of those mock brackets. But I think getting the difference between a 7 and an 8, or even a 9, I mean 7 or 8/9, I think is a big deal because of who the number one seeds are. I think we talked about this in weeks past, but there seems to be kind of a sharp drop-off out of maybe after the top maybe 5 or 6 teams. So I think I think this is an incredibly important game for the Spartans actually because of what the difference between a 2 and an 8, or I mean a 7 and an 8 would be just because of who the potential second round matchup would be down the road. So we'll see. I mean, the Spartans have won, 2 of the last 3, 2 of the last 4 Big Ten tournaments. So it's no longer the excuse that Izzo doesn't care about the Big Ten tournament anymore. That was always the fun one. MSU hadn't won the tournament since 2000, 2001. Izzo doesn't care. He just wants to get to March, and Izzo would always insist that was not the case. After upset would happen. And I think the 2 times that they have won, I think meant a lot to them. Last year beating Michigan. The previous one they won was after they lost the outright championship on the final day to Ohio State. So there was a lot of motivation, I think, behind those. And I think this team's kind of got some motivation to just try to win it. I think it's anybody's tournament outside of Wisconsin, like I was saying, and so you never know what can happen.
Yeah, it'll be a fun tournament, I think. Like you were saying, there's so much parity around the league. The other interesting thing for me, just specifically living in Ann Arbor, is that Michigan-Illinois game tomorrow is at noon. So I'm really interested at work to see, because there's a lot of Michigan alums in the office. I'm really interested to see what the office ends up looking like at about noon tomorrow afternoon.
I'm curious. I mean, they're playing with Illinois. I don't think.
Yeah.
They got to win. They're going to have to beat Wisconsin, Michigan to reach the NIT, aren't they? Because one of their wins was the D2.
Right. So it's not. What I found out is that the 500 requirement is not to get to.
Oh, that's
even 500.
right.
It's not a requirement, but the NIT's never invited a team that wasn't at least 500 overall.
Right.
And then the other thing is that there's been several teams that have won their regular season championships, teams like Murray State, for instance, that got upset in their conference tournaments.
Yeah, and they get automatic bids.
An auto bid. So it's kind of that NIT window's closing, and Beeline's said that he won't go to a different tournament if it's not the NCAA or the NIT. So yeah, the Wolverines are really on the brink of not if they don't beat Illinois and then Wisconsin, then they won't be in the postseason at all, which is
I actually think
kind of a sharp drop off there.
A little bit off topic here, but those auto bids, I really don't like auto bids going to conference tournament champions. I think it honestly, for the most part, hurts the smaller conferences because a lot of times you're getting upsets and you don't get your best team in there. I think you win the regular season conference tournament, you should get the automatic tournament bid. If you win the conference tournament, you should get the automatic NIT bid. I think they should kind of flip that around. Not that I think they would, because the conference tournaments bring so much attention and make so much money that maybe it's not worth it. But if those teams wanted better chances of pulling up upsets, or at least in those conference tournaments, you want your top seeds getting heavy odds stacked in their favor. Like I think in the MAC tournament, I think the 1 and 2 seeds already get buys to the semifinals. I mean that's
that MAC tournament bracket is insane.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's how you protect your top teams.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's a better way to do it for the smaller conferences.
I think for the MAC it makes sense because those first round games are played on on campus sites, and then they do after that first round is over, then they go to Cleveland and play the games there. But actually I like the way that the way these conference tournaments are set up because other than the Ivy League, there's theoretically everyone has the ability to make a crazy run and make the tournament, and then make a run in the tournament potentially too. So it's not, and I realize that those things don't happen very often, but I've got an Oakland shirt.
I've got an Oakland shirt from the 2005 tournament where they were below 500 and made the tournament and then won the play-in game.
Right, and then it seems like Georgia, it was like 5-6 years ago that were, had no business being in the tournament and win their conference tournament. But I like that aspect of college basketball. It just seems very democratic, right? Where any team can, unless you're in the Ivy League, any team can make the tournament going into, they just got to win 3 or 4 games in a row and they can get there. I like that. I see what you're saying, though. I mean, it's not winning the Big Ten tournament, winning any conference tournament, it tells you less about that team than if they had won the regular season. Absolutely.
Yeah, and speaking of conference tournaments and auto bids, Big Ten hockey is looking like potentially, I think every team, I think the only chance that any of these teams have, any of the 6 Big Ten hockey teams to make the NCAA tournament would be to win the Big Ten tournament. Minnesota might have an outside shot, but we're going into the final weekend of the regular season here, and with a sweep of Wisconsin last week, the Spartans moved it to first place in the Big Ten, which was remarkable. In 2015, they've been on a remarkable stretch. Jake Hildebrand has 2 or 3 straight shutouts. I think 4 in his past 8. I think they've won like 9 of 11 games or something like that. So they're sitting atop the conference standings with 2 games to go. It's a home and home against Michigan, who is 1 point behind in second place. Minnesota also is 1 point behind, and Penn State is 3 points behind. And the way this final weekend matches up is Minnesota, Penn State, and Michigan, Michigan State. So theoretically, any of these 4 teams could come away with the regular season conference championship. And now, while it wouldn't mean an auto NCAA tournament bid, the Spartans haven't won a regular season conference championship in hockey since 2001, which is the Ron Mason days. So it's credit to Tom Anastas for really turning things around in the second half of the season. I know his job security has been a topic for Spartan hockey fans for quite a while, but I think that's kind of ended now with how this season, how the second half of this season has gone. The Spartans and Wolverines play Friday night at Munn Ice Arena and Saturday night at Yost Ice Arena. Now, the way Big Ten hockey scoring goes in terms of points, a regulation or overtime win gets you 3 points, a shootout win gets you 2 points, a shootout loss gets you 1 point. So when you got 4 teams separated by 3 points, a whole lot is up in the air. MSU could win the championship. They could finish in 4th. Anything could happen. And next week, the Big Ten hockey tournament is at the Joe, and the top 2 teams get a bye there. So even if MSU doesn't get the conference championship, necessarily getting a 1 or 2 seed out of the 6 would mean a lot for their NCAA or their Big Ten tournament and therefore NCAA tournament chances. So that's a huge one for Spartan hockey this weekend. I think the students, are still on spring break, so I don't even know if the students will be in town. But for all the struggles MSU's hockey has had in the past 5+ years, they've always done well against Michigan at Munn. No matter how bad MSU was, no matter how good Michigan was, for the past 5 years, they've always played Michigan tough at Munn, except for I know there was that one year they had the CCHA tournament at Munn, or a series at Munn, and Michigan won 2 to get them a sweep. But other than that, in the regular season, MSU has done very well against Michigan, and Michigan's a team that beat MSU at the Joe. They beat MSU, or no. MSU won at the Joe. Michigan won at Yost, and no, I've got this mixed up. They've played 3 times. Michigan won the.
Here we go.
Michigan won the GLI championship, beat MSU, and MSU won the regular season game at the Joe, and then Michigan won the outdoor game at Soldier Field. So it's 2-1. Yeah. But they haven't played at Munn or Yost, which is a damn shame because those home sites are what college hockey is all about. So we'll finally get that to end the season. MSU always does poorly at Yost. They haven't won there in forever. Michigan struggles at Munn. So we'll see how home ice plays into this. Should be a lot of fun. I believe both games are on Fox Sports Detroit, so you should definitely check that out. I know the first game will probably play into the basketball game. So it'll be an eventful Friday night, and we'll also talk about the hockey game on our post show. Which reminder, after MSU's Big Ten tournament game, basketball tournament game. In the reaction thread, we will set up a basically live podcast and make it kind of a post show. You guys can interact in the comments, ask questions, give thoughts, react to our thoughts, just kind of have fun with it. We're going to try this out and see how it goes. So I recommend you guys check that out.
Yeah, I'm actually excited about college hockey. I can't say that I've ever been excited about college hockey before, and this weekend definitely qualifies, right? To be playing a home and home against Michigan with the Big Ten title on the line, and a bye in that tournament to potentially only having to win 2 instead of 3 games is huge. So yeah, that's I'm actually really excited, and the timing works out great. So that first game on Friday is at 7. MSU plays probably around 9 o'clock. Those games end up getting pushed back pretty often, so I'm guessing that it's going to line up just right so you can watch, if not the entire Michigan State hockey game, almost all of it, up until the start of that basketball game. And the game on Saturday, so if MSU basketball wins on Friday night, there's going to be significant overlap on Saturday because the Michigan State game, hockey game on Saturday at Yost is at 5.
Oh, really? I didn't even check.
And MSU plays what is going to be about 3:30. So
3:34, for hoops. So those will overlap too. So that's it's annoying.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate. But yeah, Friday night works out really well. With a win at Munn, MSU would be in really great shape, assuming that one of Minnesota or Penn State doesn't end up with a sweep in that other series. But yeah, I'm excited about that too. Friday night should really be a blast. I mean, from 7 until whenever we're done with our live podcast, it's gonna be pretty wild.
Yeah, so it'll be an interesting night. Hopefully, you guys will join us in this live podcast thing will work. Hopefully we don't have any connection issues there like we had a couple tonight. But if you've made it through the podcast so far, I really appreciate you listening. Make sure you subscribe on iTunes or wherever, and keep checking out the great stuff we got on theolercolors.com. This is a fun time of year in March, so we'll see how things turn out. So thanks again for listening, and see you, everybody.
See ya.